Back with another video. This is going to be our fifth part of our scripting tutorial series, and today we have returns and parameters. So let's just get right into it. So our function script, I'm going to enable this. I disabled the other scripts just because the output is getting messed up a lot. So let's just call this function again because I got rid of mine. But let's just get started. So basically, let's do returns first. A return statement is basically the marking. So it has two cases. One, it gives an answer back. So for an example, this function will run, right? And it'll do all of these things, but I have no return statement at the end, which we can just write here, return. This statement will literally what it says, return. It'll return something back from the function. So for example, it's like doing the work on an assignment, but not necessarily showing how you got it, but it's not giving you the answer. So here's better here. Okay. So you call this function, right? And return marks basically what it's gonna give back. So for example, once that it gives like an answer from the function. I'm having a hard time explaining it. So like I'll show you here. Let's make a new function. So let's just make a function for local function add numbers, okay? And we're gonna do this with the parameters as well. So our parameters right here, we're gonna say, so yeah, a parameter is inside this open and close parentheses. You might be asking what these are for. These in Lua, these open close parentheses are used. They're basically variables that we can use inside the function. So we can say like number 1, number 2, and we define them when we call it. When we call the function, that's our argument. So inside of the actual definition of the function, these are our parameters, right? And then when we call like add numbers, and then I say a 5, 5, these are our arguments. So these basically we're defining these variables right here inside the function. So for example, number 1, when we call this add numbers function this time, number 1 is 5 and number 2 is also 5, right? So I can say local function number 1 plus, yeah, let's do this. Print number 1 plus number 2, right? And what do you think it's going to do? It's going to print out 10 because 5 plus 5 is 10. So these are your variables. See how it says A right there when you hover over it, because this is a variable, doesn't know what it is yet. And we define it when we actually call this function. This is really useful. This is super duper useful, because when you call these functions again and you already have these variables like right here, these parameters is defined, what it can do is basically you don't have to make really specific things. Remember, these are variables, so these kind of will just define for you. Not define for you, of course you define, but it'll do the work for you. So it's not hard coding anything. You can kind of like, these are like the steps in order to have like an automation type system, if you know what I mean. Like you can just call the function and then you run these variables and then it'll do it for whatever. But for now, let's just print out. So our called add numbers of 5 plus 5, and it prints out 10. See that? 5 plus 5 is 10, and it printed it out. And then we change it to like 7. And even though we can print number 1 and we can print number 2, and it'll show us, it'll give us 12, 5, and 7. Right? So remember, these are variables, and we define these variables as numbers. If we try to do multiplication, so asterisk sign, 35. See that? And if we try to do minus, you get the gist. And we can divide, and we can do modular. This is that gives us a remainder. So yeah, 5. And then we can do that. And yeah, I hope you guys understand how that worked, but this is where returns come into play. So we can just write this return number 1 plus number 2 instead of the print statement. Oh, we didn't print it out. Sorry. Look. Then instead of add, like we can just call, so we can print out add numbers of 5 and 7 or 5. Let's do 5 and 7. Yeah. And basically, what's gonna happen here is when we print out add numbers 5 and 7, 12. See that? And the reason why it does this is because of this return statement. See, if I got rid of this and I just said number 1, like local number is equal to number 1 plus number 2, and we try to print, nothing would happen because we didn't return anything back. We never returned actually this value. So now we can say return number. We can do that. See? Because that's our variable. And it'll give us 12. There we go. So now when we print the function, it will know exactly what it's looking for. And this is, returns aren't just used for print statements, obviously. The print statement is to show you that exactly how this return works. A return will give us an answer back for the function. And returns are really useful because in the second case of using returns is they end the function prematurely, if wanted. So here's an example. So let's make a function right here. And I'm not gonna run any parameters. So let's say this return at the end of it. Let's say return false, right? And then let's say if bool right here, this boolean is equal to true, then return true, right? Else return else if bool is equal to nil, then return nil. Okay. And then there you go. And we can just put return false at the end. So this, what's gonna happen is this. You might be asked, if we print out return statements, right? What do you think is gonna happen here? See, so it's gonna check, is bool equal to true? It's gonna run out true. So when this line of code runs, everything after will not run because we returned it at this point. Returns also mark the end of a function, which is why they're so powerful with if statements as well. Because if you use an if statement with a return statement, every line of code after the if statement will not run because you returned in this if statement block. That's why we can like use returns as like a default state. For example, to find out if something is true or false or if a number and such, we can use it as a default state as well. That's also very useful. So the default of this function will be like false. So if none of this runs, it will just go false. But if the bool is equal to nil, then the function will give us back nil. And if the bool is equal to true, then it'll true. So we can print out return statements and we'll see we get true. See that? And that's why I didn't print out false or nil, is because this was true and we returned at true. If I got this, if I just get rid of this, then print lol, something like that, what do you think is going to happen now? It's going to return false because we never ended right there, see? What happened is this line of code actually ran because we didn't end right here at this if statement. Everything after the if block ran. And that includes the returning false. Return true. That's why returns are so useful. Returns are used, you can use them to end the case of a function prematurely if you'd like. Or you can use them to return an answer back. That's when you return a function prematurely, you're basically returning an answer. You're returning nothing. You're returning nil, basically. So I don't even have to write return nil. I can just put return. And if you put just return, then nothing will come back. It'll just return nothing. Oh, well, it's true. So return me true. It gave me true. But return is basically an answer. So if we don't have this return number, there's no answer to this function. And when we print, it's not going to know what to print out. But since we returned, our script knows that this function is this is the answer to this function. The work is still done in the function, don't get me wrong, but the return statement is actually giving us our answers, like packaging it up and giving it back to the script. That's why returning is so useful, because you got to know exactly what you want to return to. Do you want to return a bool value? Do you want to return a string? Do you want to return a number? You know, you can write if statements, and I know I want to return a bool value, so in here, I can write a bunch of if statements to return different Boolean values like true or nil. But if none of those run, then it'll be false. Or I can return true and then make these if statements return false in different cases. So I'll give you guys an example. An example for one way I use return is like if not, like Yeah, okay, well, you guys don't know that, but I'll say something like if if this is true, if true, then return at the top of the function. So this runs right away. And this condition is not true. This condition will be like, for example, in my tower defense game, if we're trying to put down, I have a function for like putting down towers, for spawning them in the game, right? It'll check right away, is the player still alive or something like that? Is the game still running? If the game is not still running, then it'll return. It won't let you place. It'll just end the function, and none of this actual logic for spawning the tower will run. However, if it's not, then this code won't run, and it'll do the spawning tower logic, if that makes sense. You can do something like if a player, like, you can say like, if bool is equal to false, or something like that, then I'm gonna return up here, none of this will run at all, and it'll just return nothing. So returns can be used like as safety checks as well. It's very useful. I use them a lot. Every single function I have, like I always put like if this is true, then return. If the player is dead, then return. If the zombie is not alive, then the gunshot won't do any damage to anything. Just return right away. Stuff like that. Play around with returns because they're super useful. Just mess around with them. They do a lot for your game. They really, really do. You can also use returns as of course like answers too. So the way I do that is like this. So I'll say in like, for example, like saving data. I'll write down like if player data dot coins that value or something like that, the value of the coins is greater than the price of the sword or something like that, then return true. And before that return logic, then I'll have all the logic for buying it and stuff. And then if that code doesn't run, at the bottom I have like return false, so that automatically run returning false. I didn't have to put the else statement. So this my default callback is return false A. He doesn't have any conditions. He doesn't meet the criteria to buy this sword, for example. That's why what I like about returns. Also, if you try to write code after your returns, I'll say local number is equal to 5. You get an error because returns mark the end of a function as well. Remember, that's how they work. They mark the end of the function. They give us an answer for the function. Our function ended here, and here's our answer from the function. You see how that works? I can't, if I write like number or bool, like I won't even pop up. Like I can't write after return. If you try to, get an error. So that's how returns work. I know it's really confusing. Returns are very confusing for a beginner. And honestly, it took me a long time to really understand how to use them. But once you start to know how to use returns, they're very powerful and very, very useful. But to summarize it up, they just give us an answer back from our function, really. They mark the end of a function. That's also a great case for them, too, because if you return nothing, then there's nothing from the function. You can also say returns are really, really good for just checking in general. So, like, they're really good for returning true, returning false. It's super, super very useful. And you can use a function, like, for example, you can connect a function, you can call it when a player is added to the game, and the function is supposed to return true if the player has data or something like that. And if he doesn't have any data, then we return false, and then we give him default data or something like that. That could work as well. Also, yeah, that's really about it for returns, really. They just give us an answer back from our function, and they can mark the end of a function as well. That's very powerful cases. But if you guys are still confused about returns, just comment down, ask any questions. If my explaining, I know I'm not the best explainer. I just try to give it my perspective. If my explaining wasn't the best, just let me know. I'll help you out 100%. Come on my Discord server. I'll dedicate as much time as needed to get you to understand this. Returns are super duper powerful. They're so amazing. But enough about returns. Let's do more arguments and parameters. So just go down here and let's say local function parameters. And I'll say string 1, string 2. And then I'm going to say return string 1 plus string 2. And what's actually really funny about this? Let's take a look at this. If I call this function parameters, and then I say my string is hi, I'm a string. Roblox is very neat with this. You can add strings together in the constant. Wait, what? I swear I did this before. Am I tweaking? Well, I can do this. Didn't it run? Really? Wait, what? Return string 1, return string 2, returns back. Hi, I'm a string. Oh, I didn't even print this. Wait, no, no. No, I don't have to print it at all. Return. Okay, hold on. Let me see. Return. I'm going to write down a string. Return. Hello. My name is. Okay, there we go. Dot string 1. So instead of string 1, I'm going to call this name. And then name. Dot. Age. This is really useful for in my C++ class. They made us do something like this. Age, and then I'll name this one age of person, something like that. This variable. And then boom, now we're gonna run the parameters. And then I'm gonna say the name is John. And then the second argument is the age, he's 15. Or 19, whatever. There we go. Okay, this is how we'd use it. Yeah, it's a lot smarter. Okay. So this is what makes parameters and arguments so powerful, is you can run this function, right? And I'm gonna return hello, my name is, right? And then whenever we call this function, it's gonna run the name. So our name, we defined our name right here as John, and then I defined his age. I said dot age, and then the age of person, which is right here, we defined as 19. Also, I never explained this. This dot is concatenating. It's just how you can connect strings together. For example, so you can just put dot and then write down what other part of the string you want. Because in a string you can't like write down name like this. It's gonna just print out name instead of like the actual like name variable right here. So use that dot to concatenate. Is that how you say concatenate? Variables with a string. So the variable is a string itself, yes, but I'm defining the string every time. So instead of it just saying name or hard coded, it'll be automatic. So even if I put this as 5, it'll say 5, which is why we just use that dot and then. Yeah, we use that dot to concatenate, and then we use the variable. And then it should print out, hello, my name is John. And then it should say age 19. What? Huh? Actually, you know what? I can do this. Local string is equal to this. How about that? This is going to be a lot easier. Local string is equal to this. And then I'm going to return string. Oh, wait, that's annoying. Return age and name. Or actually, I'm going to write it down like this. Age and name. Return age and name. There we go. We're returning the age of name, and then we're going to print out. And I'm going to write this down in a print statement. Because, oh, wait, I'm calling it, but I never actually printed it out or anything like that. I'm just returning it. Okay. Yeah, I'm silly. Now I can say print out parameters. There we go. Thank you. Hello, my name is John, age 19. Yeah, I was being silly right now. And that's really how parameters work. And then when you start learning new things like loops and stuff, you'll loop through your parameters and use your arguments to loop through. And you'll see. I know in these tutorials, like a lot of these seem kind of useless. Like you might think, what do I even need this for? What do I need returns, parameters, or arguments? You'll definitely see why in a little bit, why this is so useful once we start doing loops. You'll 100% see why once you start getting a little bit better at coding. These are the basics. Remember, these are just the basics. The basics of anything always seem useless at first, but once you actually start applying them and making them just applicable in general to your coding or whatever it is, you can understand how important these basics were, because everything is built off of this. So if a lot of that might stem from, oh, this might seem really easy. You know, this doesn't really seem like a challenge. You know, I thought coding was a really hard thing. Later on, once we start doing more advanced stuff and I start teaching you guys how to do like systems and stuff, you're going to see how everything from these tutorials come into play. So we're going to use parameters, arguments, strings, all of this return statement, especially to return statements, especially just to make big definitions of stuff. So I really don't want you guys to get discouraged because you might think a lot of this is useless, but it's really not. And then now let's just print. And then, I mean, yeah, it's really, even then I can write down true, and it'll be 19. Hi, my name is true. Oh, shit. Oh, yeah, you can't concatenate a bool with a string. That's annoying. I mean, I don't have to write down true. Oh, wait, I can write to string true. I can do that as well. That works, huh? Yeah. Yeah, okay. That function, that there'll be a different separate video for that. It just converts stuff into strings. Yeah, and I can write down like bool value or something, and it'll return our bool. Oh, perfect! Look at that. See how our code runs together? I made this. I printed out this big bool at the top, and then all of this ran, and then bool was equal to nil because of this function right here. And then now at this function, this parameters, when we called a bool, it was nil. See how all of your code comes together and ties in? You have specific functions for different things and how they can come together and connect as one. You know, this is it's very smart to have a basic understanding of this. See, that's awesome. All right, guys. So I guess that's really about it. This video might have been a little bit confusing for arguments, parameters, and returns. I hope you guys just mess around a lot with parameters and arguments. Parameters and arguments will be a game changer in your scripting. These are awesome. These are amazing with your functions. You can write as many of these as you want. It doesn't have to be just two. You can write down, bool value. And I can say number and then whatever, and then I can as many as you want. It can go up to 50. It can be as low as 1. It can be 0. It can be 2. It can be whatever. And if I know the third parameter in my argument is going to be a bool value, I'll write it. I'll write it down as bool value or something. And yeah, that's really about it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please subscribe and like if you guys want more. If you guys have any questions, put them in the comments, and that'll be about it. Peace.